Hello, I'm back again to do a follow-up review of this Masahiro Highlander sword. They call it the first generation Highlander sword, which appears to only be a reference to the fact that it has the dragon handle that matches the sword from Highlander the series. So the sword of the television character Duncan MacLeod. This is not an officially licensed Highlander product, so it is most likely not an exact replica of Duncan's sword. As a longtime fan of the series, I'd have to say that it is certainly close enough for me to give me that momentary thrill of feeling like I'm Duncan MacLeod. This sword is from Master Cutlery's handmade line of swords. It is functional. I do refer to it as being functional. I have used mine a lot. There are some people that take exception to that, mostly because of the handle. We'll get to that a little bit later in the review. Here is the sword. You can see it comes in the typical black lacquered scabbard. It has the little cotton sageo here and the little presentation knot. There's nothing fantastic about it. It's your typical shoestring material. The fittings, the tsuka, not the tsuka, the tsuba is made of cast zinc. On this sword, they are very tight on the sword itself. On the scabbard or saya of the sword, not quite so much. In fact, when I first purchased the sword, this part here was very loose, and in fact still can be a little loose. I crimped it down to tighten it a little bit because it would actually come off sometimes when I drew the sword. It still probably needs a little glue in addition to the crimping I did, but it is at least tight enough that although it will still wiggle at times, it doesn't come off when I draw the sword. The sword is 1045 high carbon steel, and it is through hardened. The hamon on this sword is not genuine. I don't know if you can quite see it on there. You can see it, I think, maybe a little bit. It is a wire brushed hamon. Actually, on mine, it doesn't look half bad. On some other copies of this sword that I've seen, the wire brushing is a little more obvious. But it is definitely not a true hamon. It is wire brushed. The handle is made of hardened resin, which is basically a solid plastic. Now, I've never broken down one of these handles to see what is on the inside. But my research tells me that for many handles like this, a lot of times there will be a wooden or sometimes even a metal core that the tang of the sword is inserted into, and then the handle is molded around that wooden core. Here, there's this little sort of gaudyish plastic ruby, which you find on a lot of the Highlander sword knockoffs that come out of China, as this one does. Don't confuse it, and that does not mean, therefore, that it's the same as some of the stainless steel and even cheaper versions of the sword that you see. It just means they pretty much use the same method for attaching it. There is, behind this ruby, you can maybe see it on the other side, where the ruby used to be, a bamboo peg inserted there. So the sword is pegged. It does have a full tang, or at least, the 3/4 full tang that is common on a lot of these swords. Many people say that because the handle is hardened resin, that this sword therefore cannot be functional. I ultimately disagree with that, but I will say because of the handle, it is not a heavy-duty cutter by any means. Although I accept no liability for what you do with this sword, I would never recommend to anyone that they use it for anything more than light test cutting of very light materials like water bottles, or some light martial art practice. I have not followed my own advice. which has only made me more impressed with this sword. I have used the heck out of this sword and pretty much abused it. I have cut water bottles, I have cut straw, bundled straw, which I use to approximate tatami mats. So we're talking bundled straw, about that thick, that I soaked and wrapped in twine. I have cut half-inch green bamboo with this sword. It has had no issues whatsoever. One of the times when I was cutting half-inch green bamboo, I had a horrible swing, like a baseball bat swing. It hit the bamboo, sent the bamboo flying across the yard. Did no damage to the sword whatsoever. Did not roll an edge, did not bend the sword or anything else. One other time, I was cutting water bottles that I had set on a large wooden fence post, a large round wooden fence post. And I was foolishly trying to see how close to the bottom of the bottle I could cut. And I hit the fence post with a quality swing and a lot of effort behind it. And the sword did bend. It did take a set. It appeared to do no damage to the edge. And I was able to bend it back to where, at least to the naked eye, it still appears to be perfectly straight. Now, I will admit, when I'm cleaning the sword and rubbing it with a cloth, I can feel, this is about where it happened, right about here, I can feel a slight bump there from where it bent. However, I've gone back to using this sword and cutting with it without any depreciation in its performance at all. It still works great. So I love this sword. For a sword that retails around $50, that is functional enough, at least to use for light cutting, that has the look and feel of a Highlander prop sword. I love this thing. And hopefully, if you're thinking about getting one, you will too. Thank you.